I guess without further ado, we shall continue with Chapter 52, Toxicology. It really was the Count of Monte Cristo who had just arrived at the Villefors, intending to repay the Crown Prosecutor's visit. As one may imagine, the whole household had been put into a state of great excitement at the announcement of his name. Madame de Villefort, who was in the drawing-room, immediately called for her son, so that he could repeat his thanks to the Count. Edouard, who for the past 2 days had heard tell of nothing except this great man, hurried down, not out of any desire to obey his mother or to thank the Count, but from curiosity and to make some remark which would allow him the opportunity for one of those jibes that his mother always greeted with, "Oh, the wicked child! But you have to forgive him, he's so witty." When the usual greetings had been exchanged, the Count asked after Monsieur de Villefort. "My husband is dining with the Chancellor," the young woman replied. "He has just left, and will be very sorry, I am sure, at having been deprived of the pleasure of seeing you." 2 visitors who had arrived in the drawing-room before the Count, and who could not take their eyes off him, left after the period of time needed to satisfy good manners and curiosity. "By the way," Madame de Villefort asked Edouard, "what is your sister Valentine doing? Someone must go and fetch her so that I can present her to Monsieur le Comte." "You have a daughter, madame?" the Count asked. "But she must be a little girl." "She is Monsieur de Villefort's daughter," the young woman replied, "by his first marriage. A tall, handsome girl." "But melancholic," little Edouard interrupted, pulling the tail feathers out of a splendid macaw to make a plume for his hat, while the bird, on its gilded perch, cried out in pain. Madame de Villefort said only, "Be quiet, Edouard," before continuing, "The young rascal is almost right. He is repeating what he has often heard me say. Regretfully, because Mademoiselle de Villefort, despite all our efforts to amuse her, has a sad nature and taciturn character, which often contradict the impression given by her beauty. But where is she? Edouard, go and see why she is not coming." "I know, because they are looking in the wrong place." "Where are they looking?" "With Grandpa Notier." "And you don't think she's there?" No, she's not there," Edward chanted. "Where is she then? If you know, tell us." "She's under the chestnut," the naughty child said, offering the parrot, despite his mother's protests, some living flies, a species of game which the bird seemed to appreciate very much. Madame de Villefort was reaching out for the bell to let the chambermaid know where she could find Valentine when the latter came in. She did indeed appear sad, and if one examined her closely, one could even see traces of tears in her eyes. Carried forward by the rapidity of the narrative, we have merely introduced Valentine to the reader without making her better known. She was a tall, slim girl of 19, with light chestnut hair, dark blue eyes, and a languid manner, marked by that exquisite distinction that had been characteristic of her mother. Her slender, white hands, her pearl-white neck, and her cheeks, marbled with transient patches of colour, gave her at first sight the appearance of one of those beautiful English girls whose walk has been somewhat poetically compared to the progress of a swan mirrored in a lake. She came in, and, seeing the stranger about whom she had already heard so much at her stepmother's side, she greeted him with none of the simpering of a young girl, and without lowering her eyes, with a grace that made the Count take even more notice of her. He got up. "Mademoiselle de Villefort, my stepdaughter," Madame de Villefort told him, leaning across her sofa and pointing at Valentine. "And Monsieur le Comte de Monte Cristo, King of China, Emperor of Cochin China," the juvenile wit said, giving his sister a sly look. This time Madame de Villefort went pale, and was on the point of losing her temper with this domestic pest answering to the name of Edouard, but the Count, on the contrary, smiled, and seemed to regard the child with such indulgence that the mother's joy and enthusiasm were full to overflowing. "But, madame," the Count continued, picking up the conversation and looking from Madame de Villefort to Valentine, "have I not already had the honour of seeing you somewhere, you and Mademoiselle? It already occurred to me a moment ago, and when Mademoiselle came in, it cast a further light on a memory which, you must forgive me, is confused." "It seems hardly likely, monsieur. Mademoiselle de Villefort does not like being in company, and we seldom go out," the young mother said. "So perhaps it was not in company that I saw the young lady and yourself, madame, and this delightful young scamp. In any case, I am entirely unacquainted with Parisian society, for, as I think I had the honour to inform you, I have only been in Paris for a few days. No, if you would allow me to search my memory. Wait." The Count put a hand to his forehead as if to concentrate the memory. "No, it was outside. It was, I don't know, but I think the memory involves some kind of religious ceremony. Mademoiselle had a bunch of flowers in her hand. The boy was running after a fine peacock in a garden, and you, madame, were sitting under an arbour. Do help me, please. Does what I'm saying not remind you of anything?" "No, I must confess it does not," Madame de Villefort replied. "Yet I am sure, monsieur, that if I had met you somewhere, I should not have forgotten the occasion." "Perhaps the Count saw us in Italy," Valentine suggested timidly. "There you are, in Italy." "It could be," Monte Cristo said. "You have travelled in Italy, mademoiselle?" "Madame and I went there 2 years ago. The doctors feared for my chest and suggested that the Neapolitan air might be beneficial. We went via Bologna, Perugia, and Rome." "But there we are, mademoiselle!" Monte Cristo exclaimed, as though this simple hint had been enough to clarify his memory. "It was in Perugia, on the day of Corpus Christi, in the garden of the hostelry of the Post, that chance brought us together. You, mademoiselle, your son, and I. I remember having been fortunate enough to see you." "I remember Perugia perfectly well, monsieur, and the hostelry and the festival that you mention," said Madame de Villefort. "But though I am racking my brains and feel ashamed at my poor memory, I do not remember having had the honour of seeing you." "That's strange. Neither do I," Valentine said, turning her lovely eyes on Monte Cristo. "I remember, though," said Edouard. "Let me help you, madame," said the Count. "It had been a burning hot day, and you were waiting for some horses that had not arrived because of the religious festival. Mademoiselle went away into the furthest part of the garden, and your son ran off after the bird." "I caught it, mamma, you know," said Edouard. "I pulled 3 feathers out of its tail." "You, madame, remained under the arbour. Do you not recall, while you were sitting on a stone bench and, as I say, Mademoiselle de Villefort and your son were absent, you spoke for quite a long time with someone?" "Yes, indeed I do," the young woman said, blushing. "I remember. It was a man wrapped in a long woolen cloak, a doctor, I believe." "Precisely, madame. I was that man. I had been living in that hostelry for a fortnight. I cured my valet of a fever and the innkeeper of jaundice, so I was regarded as a great doctor. We spoke for a long time, madame, of various things, of Perugino, of Raphael, of the manners and customs of the place, and about that celebrated acqua tofana, the secret of which, I believe you had been told, was still kept by some people in Perugia." "That's true," Madame de Villefort said, energetically but with some signs of unease. "I do recall." "I am not sure of precisely everything that you told me, madame," the Count continued in a perfectly calm voice, "but I do remember that, making the same mistake as others about me, you consulted me on the health of Mademoiselle de Villefort?" But, monsieur, you really were a doctor, said Madame de Villefort, since you cured the sick. Madame, Molière or Beaumarchais would reply that it was precisely because I am no doctor that my patients were cured, not meaning that I cured them. I shall simply say that I have made a profound study of chemistry and natural science, but only as an amateur. You understand. At this point the clock chimed 6. "It's 6 o'clock," Madame de Villefort said, visibly agitated. "Won't you go, Valentine, and see if your grandfather is ready to have dinner?" Valentine got up, took her leave of the Count, and went out of the room without uttering a word. "Oh dear, is it because of me, madame, that you sent Mademoiselle de Villefort away?" the Count said when she had gone. "Oh, not at all," the young woman replied emphatically. "This is the time when we give Monsieur Noirtier the sad meal that sustains his sad existence. You know, monsieur, of the unhappy state to which my husband's father is reduced." "Yes, madame. Monsieur de Villefort did mention it to me. Paralysis, I believe." "Alas, yes. The poor old man is quite incapable of moving. His soul alone remains alive in that human mechanism, and even that is pale and quivering, like a lamp about to go out. But forgive me, monsieur, for telling you of our family misfortunes. I interrupted just as you were saying that you are a skilled chemist?" "Oh, no, I didn't say that, madame," the Count replied, smiling. "On the contrary, I studied chemistry because, having made up my mind to live mainly in the East, I wanted to follow the example of King Mithridates." "Mithridates Rex Ponticus," said the little pestilence, cutting the illustrations out of a splendid album. "The one who breakfasted every morning on a cup of poison à la crème." "Edward, you wicked child!" Madame de Villefort exclaimed, seizing the mutilated book from her son's hands. "You are unbearable. You're driving us mad. Leave us alone. Go to your sister Valentine and dear Grandpa Noirtier." "The album," said Edouard. "What about the album? I want it." "Why did you cut out the pictures?" "Because it amuses me." "Go away! Off with you!" "I shan't go unless you give me that album," the child said, settling into a large armchair and pursuing his usual policy of never giving way. "There you are. Take it and leave us in peace," said Madame de Villefort. She gave Edouard the album and walked to the door with him. The Count looked after her. "Let's see if she closes the door after him," he muttered. Madame de Villefort closed the door with the utmost care behind the child. The Count pretended not to notice. Then, with one final glance around her, the young woman came back to her chair. "I hope you will forgive me, madame," said the Count in that good-natured way we have already noticed in him, "for remarking that you are very strict with that delightful little scamp." "He needs a strong hand, monsieur," Madame de Villefort replied, with what was truly a mother's imperturbability. Monsieur Edouard was reciting his Cornelius Nepos when he spoke about Mithridates. The Count said, "You interrupted him in a quotation which proves that his tutor has not been wasting his time, and that your son is very advanced for his age." "The fact is, Monsieur le Comte," the mother replied sweetly, "that he is very quick, and can learn whatever he wants. He has only one fault. He is very wilful. But, on the subject of what he was saying, do you think, Count, that Mithridates really did take such precautions, and that they can be effective?" "So much so, madame, that I myself took the same measures to avoid being poisoned in Naples, in Palermo, and in Smyrna, on 3 occasions when I might otherwise have lost my life." "And you were successful?" "Perfectly so." "That's right. Now I remember you telling me something of the sort in Perugia." "Really?" the Count said, admirably feigning surprise. "I don't recall it." I asked you if poisons acted equally and with similar force on men from the north and those from the south, and you answered that the cold lymphatic temperaments of northerners made them less susceptible than the rich and energetic nature of those from the south. Quite so, said Monte Cristo. I have seen Russians untroubled as they devour substances which would surely have killed a Neapolitan or an Arab. So you think the method would be even more effective here than in the East, and that in the midst of our fogs and rains a man would more easily become accustomed to this gradual absorption of poison than in a warm climate? Yes, indeed, though of course one would only be protected against the poison to which one had been accustomed. I understand. And how would you yourself obtain this immunity, or rather, how did you do so? It is very easy. Suppose you know in advance what poison is to be used against you. Suppose this poison to be, for example, brucine. Brucine is obtained from the nux vomica, I believe, said Madame de Villefort. Precisely, madame, Monte Cristo replied, but I think I have very little to teach you. Let me compliment you. Such learning is rare in a woman. I must confess, said Madame de Villefort, that I have an all-consuming passion for the occult sciences, which speak like poetry to the imagination, and yet in the end come down to figures like an algebraic equation. But please continue. I am extremely interested in what you tell me. Well then, suppose this poison to be brucine, for example, and that you take 1 milligram the first day, 2 milligrams the second, and so on. After 10 days you would have a centigram, and increasing the daily dose by a further milligram, you would have 3 centigrams after 20 days. In other words, a dose that you would support with no ill effects, but which would be very dangerous for anyone who had not taken the same precautions. Finally, after a month, you could drink water from the same jug and kill a person who had taken it with you, while feeling no more than a slight discomfort to tell you that the water contained a poisonous substance. You know of no other antidote? None. I often read and reread that story of Mithridates, Madame de Villefort said pensively, and always thought it was a myth. No, madame. Unlike most things in history, it is true. But what you are telling me, your question, is not just idle curiosity, is it, since you have been considering this matter for 2 years already, and you tell me that the story of Mithridates has been in your mind for a long time? That's true, monsieur. When I was young, my 2 favourite subjects were the study of botany and of mineralogy. Later, when I realized that one could often explain all the history of the nations and all the lives of the individuals in the East by the use of their herbs and simples, just as flowers explain all their concepts of love, I regretted not being a man so that I could follow the example of Flamel, Fontana, or Cabanilles. All the more so, madame, Monte Cristo continued, since the Orientals are not content, like Mithridates, to make a shield of poison, but also use it as a dagger. In their hands, this science becomes not only a defensive weapon, but often an offensive one. The one serves to protect them against physical suffering, the other against their enemies. With opium, belladonna, strychnine, bois de coulvert, or cherry laurel, they put to sleep those who would rouse them. There is not one of those Egyptians, Turkish, or Greek women whom you call here wise women or spaewives who does not know enough of chemistry to astound a doctor, and of psychology to appall a confessor. Really? Madame de Villefort exclaimed, her eyes shining with a strange light as she listened. Yes, indeed, madame, Monte Cristo continued. This is how the secret dramas of the Orient are woven and unwoven, from the plant that induces love to the one that kills, from the draught that opens the heavens to the one that plunges a man into hell. There are as many subtle distinctions of all kinds as there are whims and peculiarities in the moral and physical nature of man. I would even say that the art of those chemists can admirably supply the ill and the cure to his need for love or desire for revenge. But, monsieur, are these countries in which you have spent part of your life really as fantastic as the tales that come out of them? Can a person be disposed of there with... Can a person be disposed of there with impunity? Are Baghdad and Basra truly as Monsieur Galland described them? Are you seriously telling me that the sultans and viziers who rule those peoples, making up what we here in France call the government, are like Harun-e-Rashid or Giffard, men who not only forgive a poisoner, but will even appoint him prime minister if his crime is ingenious enough, and in that case have the story set down in gold letters to amuse them in their idle moments? No, madame, the marvellous no longer exists even in the East. There, too, disguised under other names and concealed in different costumes, they have police commissioners, investigating magistrates, crown prosecutors, and other experts. Criminals there are very pleasantly hanged, decapitated, or impaled, but being clever fraudsters, they have managed to outwit human justice and ensure the success of their designs by skillful plotting. In our country, when some fool is seized with the demon of hatred or greed, when he has an enemy to destroy or a grandparent to obliterate, he goes to a grocer, gives a false name that will identify him more surely than his real one, and, pretending that the rats are keeping him awake, he buys 5 or 6 grams of arsenic. If he is very clever, he goes to 5 or 6 grocers, so he will be 5 or 6 times more easily detected. Then, once he has his medicine, he administers a dose of arsenic to his enemy or his grandparent that would kill a mammoth or a mastodon, and this, without rhyme or reason, causes the victim to emit cries that put the whole district into a turmoil. At that, a crowd of policemen or gendarmes arrive. They send for a doctor, who cuts the dead man open and takes arsenic by the spoonful out of his stomach and entrails. The next day, 100 newspapers report the matter with the name of the victim and the murderer. The very same evening, the grocer or grocers come and announce, "I sold this gentleman the arsenic." They would identify 20 purchasers rather than not identify this one. So the foolish criminal is caught, imprisoned, interrogated, confronted, confounded, condemned, and guillotined. Or, if it is a woman of some status, then she is sentenced to life imprisonment. This is the understanding you northerners have of chemistry, madame, though I must admit Deroux was better than that. "What do you expect, monsieur?" the young woman said with a laugh. "We do what we can. Not everyone knows the secrets of the Medici or the Borgias." The Count shrugged his shoulders. "Would you like me now to tell you the cause of all this ineptitude? It is because in your theatres, as far as I can tell by reading the plays that they put on there, you always see people swallowing the contents of a flask or biting the bezel of a ring, then dropping stone dead 5 minutes later. The curtain falls and the audience leaves. No one knows the consequences of the murder. One never sees the police commissioner with his scarf, or the corporal of the guard with his 4 men. And as a result, a lot of weak brains imagine that this is the way that things happen. But if you just go a step outside France, to Aleppo or Cairo, or even no further than Naples or Rome, you will see people walking along the street, upright, fresh-faced and ruddy with health, of whom the devil, were he to touch you with his cloak, could tell you, "This man has been poisoned for 3 weeks, and he will be completely dead in a month." "In that case," Madame de Villefort said, "they have rediscovered the secret of that famous aqua tofana which was said to have been lost in Perugia." Come, madame, is anything ever lost to mankind? The arts and sciences travel around the world. Things change their name, that's all, and ordinary people are deceived by it. The outcome is always the same. Poisons will particularly affect one organ or another, the stomach, the brain, the intestines. Well then, A poison can give rise to a cough, and that cough in turn to a pneumonia or some other illness recognized by medical science, which does not prevent it from being quite deadly, or, if it was not already, from becoming so thanks to the remedies administered by ignorant doctors, who are generally very poor chemists, remedies that will favour the illness or impede it as you wish. The result: a man artistically killed in accordance with the rules, about whose death the law has nothing to discover. In the words of one of my friends, that fearful and excellent chemist Abbe Adelmonte of Taurimina in Sicily, who has made an exhaustive study of these phenomena, "That's terrifying, but wonderful," said the young woman, riveted to the spot. I must admit that I had always thought such things to be inventions from the Middle Ages." "So they are, but perfected in our own time." "What do you suppose is the point of time, encouragement, medals, awards, and the Prix Montyon, except to bring society closer to perfection? Mankind will not be perfect until it can create and destroy like God. It can already destroy. That's half the battle." "What do you mean?" Madame de Villefort continued, always coming back to what interested her. "Is that the poisons of the Borgias and the Medicis, the Renés, the Ruggeri's, and probably later the Baron de Trenck, so badly treated in modern drama and novels, were simply works of art, madame, nothing more," said the Count. "Do you think that the true scientist is crudely concerned with the individual himself? Not so. Science loves the oblique approach, tour de force, imagination, if you like. Take the worthy Abbe Adelmonte, whom I mentioned a moment ago. He made some astonishing experiments in this field." "Really?" "Yes. Let me give you just one example. He had a splendid garden, full of vegetables, flowers, and fruit. From among his vegetables he would choose the least exotic, most digestible of all, say a cabbage. For 3 days he would water this cabbage with a solution of arsenic. On the 3rd day the cabbage would fall sick and wither. This was the moment to cut it. Everyone saw it as ripe and healthy. Only Abbe Adelmonte knew it was poisoned. So he took the cabbage home, got a rabbit. He had a collection of rabbits, cats, and guinea pigs as magnificent as his collection of vegetables, flowers, and fruit, and made the rabbit eat a leaf of the cabbage. The rabbit died. What investigating magistrate would dare question this? What crown prosecutor would ever draw up a petition against Monsieur Magendie or Monsieur Florin for the rabbits, guinea pigs, and cats that they have killed? Not one. So the rabbit is now dead, and the law has no reason to ask questions about it. Abbe Adelmonte gets his cook to gut the rabbit and throws the intestines on a dung heap. On the dung heap there is a hen, which pecks at the intestines, falls ill in its turn, and dies the following day. Just as it is in its final convulsive agony, a vulture flies past. There are a lot of vultures in Adelmonte's country, dives at the body and carries it off to a distant crag to eat it. 3 days later, the poor vulture, having felt constantly ill since its meal, is seized with a fainting fit several 100 feet up. It falls out of the sky and plummets into your fish pond. Pikes, eels, and moray eels are greedy fish, as you know, so they bite the vulture. Well, suppose that on the following day this eel or this pike is served up at your table, poisoned at 4 removes, and your guest is poisoned at the 5th and dies after a week or 10 days from a pain in the guts, vomiting, and an abscess on the duodenum. There will be a post-mortem, and the doctors will say the patient died of a tumour on the liver or of typhoid fever. "You link all these events together," said Madame de Villefort, "but the slightest accident might break the chain. The vulture might not fly over at the right moment, or it might fall 100 yards away from the fish pond. That's precisely where art lies. To be a great chemist in the East, you must direct chance. It can be done. Madame de Villefort listened thoughtfully. But arsenic is ineradicable, she said. However it is absorbed, if there is enough to kill, it will remain in the man's body. Just so, said Monte Cristo. Just so. That is precisely what I told my good friend Adelmonte. He thought a while, smiled, and replied with a Sicilian proverb, which I believe is also a French one. My child, the world was not made in a day, but in 7. Come back on Sunday. The following Sunday I returned. Instead of watering his cabbage with arsenic, he had watered it with a solution of salts of strychnine, strychnos colubrina, as scientists call it. This time the cabbage seemed altogether healthy, so the rabbit had no suspicion of it. 5 minutes later the rabbit died. The hen ate the rabbit, and the following day it was dead. So then we played the part of the vultures, took off the hen, and opened it up. This time all specific symptoms had vanished, and only general symptoms remained. There was no specific indication in any organ. Irritation of the nervous system, that's all, and evidence of cerebral congestion, nothing more. The hen had not been poisoned, it had died of apoplexy. This is a rare condition in hens, I know, but very common among human beings. Madame de Villefort seemed more and more preoccupied with her thoughts. It's fortunate, she said, that such substances can only be prepared by chemists, or else one half of the world would be poisoning the other. By chemists or people who are interested in chemistry, said Monte Cristo offhandedly. But then, said Madame de Villefort, making an effort to rouse herself from her own thoughts, however cleverly engineered it may be, crime is still crime. It may evade the human investigator, but it cannot escape from the eye of God. Orientals are less sensitive than we are on points of conscience, and they have wisely got rid of hell. That's all. Ah, madame, such scruples would naturally arise in a soul as honest as yours, but might soon be eradicated by reasoning. The worst side of human thought will always be summed up in that paradox of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. You know the one. The mandarin whom one can kill from a distance of 500 leagues just by raising a finger. Man's life is spent doing such things, and his intelligence is exhausted in dreaming about them. You will find very few people who would go brutally and stick a knife in the heart of their fellow man, or who, to make him disappear off the face of the earth, would administer the amount of arsenic that we mentioned a short time ago. That is really either eccentricity or stupidity. One can only reach that point if the blood is heated up to 36 degrees, the pulse is racing at 90 beats a minute, and the mind is driven outside its ordinary limits. But if, as though advancing like a philologist from a word to its near synonym, you make a mere elimination. Instead of committing a base murder, you purely and simply remove from your path the person who bothers you, without any clash or violence or all that paraphernalia of suffering which, becoming a torment, makes the victim into a martyr and the person responsible into a butcher in the full force of the word. If there is no blood, no cries, no contortions, and above all none of that horrible and compromising instantaneousness of the event, then you will evade the weight of the human law that tells you, don't upset the social order. This is what Orientals do, and that is how they succeed. Serious and phlegmatic people, they are little troubled by matters of time when something of any importance is to be resolved. There is still conscience, said Madame de Villefort in a strained voice, stifling a sigh. Yes, said Monte Cristo. Yes, fortunately there is still conscience, because without it we should be in a fine mess. After any slightly energetic action, conscience saves us, because it supplies us with 1,000 good excuses, which we alone are left to judge. These excuses, effective as they may be in ensuring our sleep, might perhaps be rather less so before a court where they had to protect our lives. So Richard III, for example, was wonderfully well served by his conscience after the elimination of Edward IV's 2 children. He could say to himself, "These 2 children, sons of a cruel tyrant, had inherited the vices of their father, though I alone was able to detect this in their juvenile dispositions. These 2 children stood in the way of my efforts to bring happiness to the English people, to whom they would certainly have brought misfortune." In the same way, Lady Macbeth was served by her conscience. Her desire, whatever Shakespeare says, was to give a throne to her son, not to her husband. Oh, maternal love is such a great virtue and powerful impulse that it can excuse many things. Hence, without her conscience, Lady Macbeth would have been a very unhappy woman after the death of Duncan. These frightful axioms and horrid paradoxes were delivered by the Count with his own peculiar brand of ingenious irony. Madame de Villefort received them avidly. There was a moment's silence. "Do you know, Count," she said, "that you are a terrible reasoner, and that you see the world in a somewhat lurid light? Is it because you have viewed mankind through alembics and retorts that you see it in this way? For you are right, you are a great chemist, and the elixir which you gave my son, which so quickly brought him back to life—" "Oh, don't trust it, madame," said Monte Cristo. "A drop of that elixir sufficed to bring the child back to life when he was dying, but 3 drops would have driven the blood into his lungs in such a way as to give him palpitations of the heart. 6 would have interrupted his breathing and caused him a much more serious fit than the one he was already suffering. 10 would have killed him. You recall, madame, how I hastened to pull him away from those phials which he had been rash enough to touch. Was that some frightful poison? Good heavens, no. Firstly, let's forget this word poison, because doctors use the most deadly poisons which, according to the way in which they are administered, become very effective medicines. So, what was it? A subtle preparation made by my friend Abbé Adelmonte, which he showed me how to use. Oh, it must have been an excellent antispasmodic. A sovereign remedy, madame, as you saw, the Count replied. I often use it, with all due caution, of course, he added with a smile. I imagine so, Madame de Villefort replied in the same tone. I myself, nervous as I am and subject to fainting fits, I need a doctor, Adelmonte, to discover a remedy that will help me to breathe easily and overcome my fear of one day suffocating to death. Meanwhile, as such things are hard to find in France, and your abbé would probably not be willing to come to Paris for me, I made do with Monsieur Planche's antispasmodics, and I frequently use the mint and drops from Hoffmann. Look, here are some pastilles that I had made up for me. They contain a double dose. Monte Cristo opened the tortoise-shell pill-box that she handed to him, and sniffed the pastilles with an air of a specialist able to appreciate the preparation. They are exquisite, he said, but unfortunately they need to be swallowed, which is often not possible for an unconscious person. I prefer my specific. Of course, I agree, having seen it at work, but no doubt it is a secret, and I shall not be indiscreet enough to ask for it. But I, madame, Monte Cristo said, getting up, am gallant enough to offer it to you. Oh, monsieur! Just remember one thing. In small doses, this is a cure. In large ones, a poison. 1 drop may restore life, as you have seen. 5 or 6 would certainly kill. And all the more frightfully because, If dissolved into a glass of wine, they would not alter the taste in the slightest. But I must stop, madame, or I shall seem to be giving you advice. The clock had just struck 6:30, and the maid announced a friend of Madame de Villefort's who was to dine with her. If I had the honour to be meeting you for the third or fourth time instead of the second, Monsieur le Comte, said Madame de Villefort, if I had the honour to be your friend instead of having merely the pleasure of being indebted to you, I should insist that you stay to dinner, and I should not accept your first refusal. Thank you 1,000 times, madame, Monte Cristo replied, but I do myself have an engagement from which I cannot escape. I have promised to take a Greek princess, a friend of mine, to the theatre. She has not yet seen grand opera, and is counting on me to introduce her to it. Go then, monsieur, but do not forget my recipe. What, madame? Were I to do so, I should also have to forget the hour I have just spent in conversation with you, and that would be quite impossible. Monte Cristo bowed and went out, leaving Madame de Villefort absorbed in her own thoughts. That is a strange man, she said to herself, and one who, I would guess, was baptized at El Monte. As for Monte Cristo, the visit had succeeded beyond his expectations. Well, indeed, he thought as he went out, this is fertile soil, and I am certain that the seed that falls in it will not remain barren. The next day, as he had promised, he sent the recipe she had asked for. And I think there we shall take our first break. Oh God, our break. There we go. Yeah, I'm slightly worried that she's gonna poison someone now. I hope she doesn't poison the grandfather. That would be sad. Oh well. Anyway, yes, everybody go have a nice break, and we will see you back in about 5 minutes. And bye for now. we're back. I hope everybody has had a good break. I hope you have done break-related things. I myself have got myself a cup of tea, which I feel I need, because I don't know if you can hear, but my voice is a little bit scratchy, just a little bit. I was singing last night as well, so not 100% sure that it is doing the best that it could be, but yes. I hope we've all had a nice chilled break. Don't mind me sipping my tea. Yep, that's still very hot. But yes, so someone's definitely not going to get poisoned. Definitely not going to happen. No idea. So, yes. And yes, I did see, like, he's been watching Princess Bride. It's like, ah, yes, iocane powder. Ha. But anyway, shall we continue? Let us continue. All will be fine. Exactly. It's all going to be absolutely fine and cool. So, yes. Let's go on to chapter... What are we on now? Oh. Chapter 53. Robert le Diable. The excuse of the opera had been all the more appropriate since there was that evening a formal soirée at the Royal Academy of Music. Levasseur had long been indisposed, but was returning in the role of Bertram, and, as ever, the work of the fashionable maestro had attracted the cream of Parisian society. Morcerf, like most rich people, had his own orchestra stall, plus 10 people whom he knew in whose boxes he could request a seat, without counting his place in the lion's box. Chateau Renard's stall seat was next to Morcerf's. Beauchamp, being a journalist, was king of the theatre and could sit where he wished. That evening, Lucien Debray had the minister's box at his disposal, and had offered it to the Comte de Morcerf, who, on Mercédès' refusal, had sent it to Danglars with a message that he would probably go and visit the Baroness and her daughter in the course of the evening, if those ladies would like to accept the box that he offered them. Those ladies were sure not to refuse. No one likes a free box as much as a millionaire. As for Danglars, he had declared that his political principles and his position as a député for the opposition would not permit him to go into the minister's box. As a result, the Baroness wrote to Lucien to take her, since she could not go to the opera alone with Eugenie. True, if the two women had gone alone, people would surely have considered this very bad behaviour, while no one could object to Mademoiselle Danglars going to the opera with her mother and her mother's lover. One must take the world as it is. The curtain went up, as usual, on an almost empty house. It is fashionable amongst Parisians to arrive at the theatre when the show has begun, with the result that the first act is spent by those members of the audience who have arrived, not in watching or listening to the play, but in watching the entry of those spectators who are arriving, so that nothing can be heard except the sound of doors banging and voices in conversation. "Look!" Albert suddenly exclaimed, seeing the door open on a side box in the dress circle. "Look! Countess G!" "Who or what is Countess G?" Chateau Renard asked. "Come now, Baron, you can't be forgiven for asking that. Who is Countess G?" "Oh, that's right," said Chateau Renard. "Isn't it that charming Venetian woman?" "Exactly." At that moment, Countess G noticed Albert and greeted him with a wave and a smile. "Do you know her?" asked Chateau Renard. "Yes, Franz introduced me to her when we were in Rome." "Could you do the same for me in Paris?" "Of course." "Hush!" cried the audience. The two young men continued their conversation, not appearing to take the slightest notice of the fact that the stalls seemed to want to listen to the music. "She was at the races in the Champ de Mars," said Chateau Renard. "Today?" "Yes." "Well, now, I'd forgotten about the races. Were you in for anything?" "A mere trifle. 50 louis." "Who won?" "Nautilus. I was betting on him." "But there were 3 races." Yes, the Prix de Jockey Club, a gold cup. Something quite odd happened. What was that? Be quiet, shouted the audience. What was that? Albert repeated. The winners of that race were an entirely unknown horse and jockey. What? Yes, egad. No one took any notice of a horse entered under the name of Vampa and a jockey entered under the name of Job, when suddenly a superb chestnut appeared, with a jockey the size of your fist. They had to give him a handicap of 20 pounds of lead in his saddle, and it still didn't stop him getting to the post 3 lengths ahead of Ariel and Barbaro, who were running against him. And no one knew whom the horse and jockey belonged to? No. You say the horse was entered in the name of Vampa. In that case, Albert said, I'm a step ahead of you, because I do know the owner. Silence! The stalls yelled. This time the outcry was so great that the 2 young men finally realized that they were the object of the audience's appeals. They turned around for a moment, looking for a man in the crowd who would take responsibility for what they regarded as an impertinence, but no one repeated the invitation, so they turned back towards the stage. At that moment the door to the minister's box opened, and Madame Danglars, her daughter, and Lucien Debray took their seats. "Ah," said Chateau Renard, "there are some people you know, Viscount. Why on earth are you staring to the right? Someone's trying to catch your eye." Albert turned, and his eyes did meet those of Baroness Danglars, who gave a little greeting with her fan. As for Mademoiselle Eugénie, her large black eyes would scarcely deign to look down to the stalls. "In truth, my dear friend," said Chateau Renard, "I do not understand, apart from the misalliance, and I don't suppose that bothers you very much. As I say, I cannot understand, apart from the misalliance, what you can have against Mademoiselle Danglars. She really is a very fine-looking creature." "Very fine indeed," said Albert, "but I must confess that, as far as beauty is concerned, I should prefer something softer, smoother, and in short more feminine." "That's the younger generation for you," said Chateau Renard, who, as a man of 30, took on a paternal air with Morcerf. Never satisfied. "What, my dear fellow, they find you a fiancée built like Diana the Huntress, and you are not happy?" "Precisely. I should have preferred something like the Venus de Milo or the Venus of Capua. This Diana the Huntress, always surrounded by her nymphs, frightens me a little. I'm afraid she might treat me like Actaeon." A glance at the girl might have gone some way to justify the feelings to which Morcerf had just admitted. Mademoiselle Danglars was beautiful, but, as Albert said, her beauty was somewhat strict. Her hair was a lustrous black, but there was a certain rebelliousness in its natural wave. Her eyes, as black as her hair, were framed in magnificent eyebrows that had only one defect, which was that from time to time they were quizzically raised, and the eyes were exceptional above all for their determined expression, which was surprising to find in a woman. Her nose had the precise proportions that a sculptor would have given to Juno, only her mouth was a little too large, but it exhibited fine teeth which highlighted the excessive redness of lips that did not harmonize with the pallor of the complexion. Finally, a beauty spot at the corner of the mouth, larger than is usual with these freaks of nature, completed the look of resolution in the face that somewhat dismayed Morcerf. For that matter, the rest of Eugénie's person was of a piece with the head that we have just attempted to describe. As Chateau Renard said, she was Diana the Huntress, but with something even firmer and more muscular in her beauty. As for her upbringing, if there was anything to be said against it, it was that, like some traits of her physiognomy, it seemed more appropriate to the other sex. She spoke 2 or 3 languages, had an innate talent for drawing, wrote verse and composed music. This last was her great passion, which she studied with one of her school friends. A young woman with no expectations but, one was assured, with everything needed to become an outstanding singer. It was said that a great composer took an almost paternal interest in this girl and encouraged her to work in the hope of eventually finding fortune in her voice. The possibility that Mademoiselle Louise d'Armilly, that this was the name of the talented young person, might one day appear on the stage meant that Mademoiselle Danglars, although she received her at home, did not appear with her in public. Despite this, while she did not have the independent position of a friend in the banker's house, Louise did enjoy a higher status than that of an ordinary governess. A few seconds after Madame Danglars entered her box, the curtain came down, and because the length of the intervals allowed the opportunity to walk around the foyer or to pay visits for some half an hour, the stalls were more or less emptied. Morcerf and Château-Renard were among the first to go out. For a moment, Madame Danglars thought that Albert's haste was owing to his desire to pay her his compliments, and she had leant over her daughter to warn her of this visit, but the girl was content to shake her head with a smile. At the same time, as if to prove how well-founded Eugénie's denial was, Morcerf appeared in a side box in the dress circle. This box belonged to Countess G. "Ah, traveller, there you are," she said, offering him her hand with all the cordiality of an old acquaintanceship. "It is most kind of you to have recognized me, and more especially to have given me preference for your first visit." "Believe me, madame," Albert replied, "had I been informed of your arrival in Paris and known your address, I should not have waited so long. But permit me to introduce Monsieur le Baron de Château-Renard, my friend and one of the few gentlemen left in France, who has just told me that you were at the races on the Champ de Mars." Château-Renard bowed. "You were at the races then, monsieur?" the Countess inquired, examining him with interest. "Yes, madame." "Very well," she asked. "Can you tell me whose was the horse that won the Prix du Jockey Club?" "I regret not, madame," said Château-Renard. "I was just asking Albert the same question." "Do you insist, Countess?" asked Albert. "On what?" "On knowing the owner of the horse." "Absolutely. I must tell you, but would you happen to know, Viscount?" "Madame, you were about to begin a story. I must tell you, you said." "Well, I must tell you that charming chestnut horse and the pretty little jockey in his pink cap appealed to me so much from the first moment I saw them that I was making a wish for them both, just as though I had bet half my fortune on them. So when I saw them pass the post 3 lengths ahead of the other runners, I was so happy that I started to clap my hands like a madwoman. Imagine my astonishment when, on arriving home, I met the little pink jockey on the staircase. I thought that the winner of the race must chance to live in the same house as I when, on opening the door of my drawing-room, the first thing I saw was the gold cup, the prize won by the unknown horse and jockey. Inside it was a little scrap of paper with the following words: "To Countess G, Lord Ruthven." "Precisely," said Morcerf. "What do you mean, precisely?" "I mean, it was Lord Ruthven himself." "What Lord Ruthven?" "Ours, the vampire, the one from the Teatro Argentina." "Really?" the Countess exclaimed. "Is he here?" "Indeed he is." "And you see him? You receive him? You visit him?" "We are close friends. Even Monsieur de Château-Renard here has the honour of knowing him." "What makes you think that he was the winner?" "His horse ran under the name Vampa." "So?" "Don't you remember the name of the famous bandit who took me prisoner?" "Of course. From whose hands the Count miraculously saved me?" "Indeed. His name was Vampa. So you see it must be him." "But why did he send me the cup?" First of all, Countess, because I often mentioned you to him, as you may well imagine. Then, because he was delighted at finding a compatriot and pleased by the interest that this compatriot took in him. I hope you never told him of the silly things we used to say about him. I can't swear it. And, in fact, this idea of giving you the cup under the name of Lord Ruthven... This is terrible. He will be fearfully angry with me. Is he behaving as if he was? No, admittedly. Well then! So you're telling me he is in Paris? Yes. And what sort of a stir has he caused? Oh, said Albert, they did talk about him for a week. Then there was the coronation of the Queen of England and the theft of Mademoiselle Mar's diamonds, and no one talked about anything else. My dear fellow, said Chateau Renard, one can see that the Count is your friend, and you treat him accordingly. Don't believe what Albert is saying, Countess, because the truth is that no one in Paris is talking about anything except the Count of Monte Cristo. The first thing he did was to send Madame Danglars some horses worth 30,000 francs. Then he saved Madame de Villefort's life, and now it appears he has won the Jockey Club race. Despite what Morcerf says, I maintain that people are still talking about the Count at the moment, and that they will talk about him even more a month from now, if he carries on behaving in this eccentric manner, which appears in the event to be his normal way of carrying on. Maybe, said Morcerf. Meanwhile, who has taken up the Russian ambassador's box? Which? The Countess asked. The one between the columns in the first tier. It looks as though it has been entirely done up. So it does, said Chateau Renard. Was there someone there in the first act? Where? In that box. No, said the Countess. I didn't see anyone. Then, returning to the original subject of the conversation, you think that your Count of Monte Cristo won the prize? I'm certain of it. And sent me the cup? No doubt about it. But I don't know him, said the Countess. I'm quite tempted to send it back. Oh, don't do that. He would send you another, carved out of sapphire or rubies. He does these things. One must take him as he is. At that moment the bell rang to announce that the second act was about to begin. Albert got up to return to his place. Shall I see you? The Countess asked. In the intervals, if you permit, I may come and find out if I can be of some use to you while you are in Paris. Gentlemen, the Countess said, I am at home to my friends every Saturday evening at number 22 Rue de Rivoli. So now you know. The two young men bowed and went out. As they came back into the theatre, they saw everyone standing in the stalls, all eyes turned towards a single point in the room. They turned their own eyes in the same direction and stopped at what had once been the Russian ambassador's box. A man in black, aged between 35 and 40, had just entered with a woman in oriental dress. The woman was strikingly beautiful, and her costume so ornate that, as we said, all eyes were immediately fixed on her. Well, well, said Albert, it's Monte Cristo and his Greek. It was indeed the Count and Haydée. A moment later the young woman was the object of attention not only from the stalls, but throughout the theatre. Women were leaning out of their boxes to see the cascade of diamonds shining in the light of the chandeliers. The second act was played against that dull murmuring which is the response of a large crowd to some great event. No one thought of shouting silence. The woman, so young, so beautiful, and so dazzling, was the most interesting spectacle to be had. This time, a sign from Baroness Danglars clearly indicated to Albert that she wished him to call on her in the next interval. Morcerf was too well bred to keep someone waiting when they had shown that they wanted to speak to him, so when the act ended, he hurried up to the box in front of the house. There he greeted the two ladies and held out his hand to Debray. The Baroness welcomed him with a charming smile, and Eugenie with her habitual icy indifference. "My good fellow," said Debray, "you see before you a man at the end of his tether, begging you to assist him. Madame has been deluging me with questions about the Count. What he is, where he comes from, where he's going. Damn it, I'm not Cagliostro. So to get out of it, I said, ask Morcerf. He knows this Count of Monte Cristo like the back of his hand. That's why we called you." "Isn't it incredible," said the Baroness, "that someone with 500,000 in secret funds at his disposal can be so ill-informed?" "Madame," Lucien said, "please believe me when I tell you that, if I had 500,000 at my disposal, I should use it for some other purpose than making inquiries about Monsieur de Monte Cristo, who has no merit as far as I can see, apart from being twice as rich as a nabob. But I am handing over to my friend Morcerf. Settle it with him. It's no longer my business." "A nabob would certainly not have sent me a pair of horses worth 30,000 francs, with 4 diamonds at their ears, each worth 5,000 francs. "Ah, diamonds," Morcerf said, laughing. "He has a passion for them. I think that, like Potemkin, he always has some in his pocket and spreads them along his path, as Tom Thumb did with his pebbles." "He must have found a diamond mine," said Madame Danglars. "Do you know that he has unlimited credit with the Baron's bank?" I didn't know," Albert replied, "but it doesn't surprise me." "And that he told Monsieur Danglars that he meant to stay a year in Paris and spend 6 millions? "He must be the Shah of Persia travelling incognito." "The woman, Monsieur Lucien," said Eugenie, "have you noticed how beautiful she is?" "Really, mademoiselle, you are the only woman I know who is so generous in speaking about others of your own sex." Lucien put his eyeglass to his eye. "Delightful," he said. "Does Monsieur Morcerf know who she is?" "Mademoiselle," Albert said, in reply to this almost direct question, "I do know, more or less, as I more or less know everything relating to this mysterious personage. The young woman is Greek." "It is easy to see that by her dress, so you're telling me nothing that all of the rest of the theatre doesn't already know." "I much regret," said Morcerf, "that I am such an ignorant guide, but I have to admit that my information goes no further than that. Though I do also know that she is a musician, because one day when I was lunching with the Count I heard the sound of a guzla which only she could have been playing." "So he gives you lunch, does he, your Count?" said Madame Danglars. "Magnificently, believe me." "I must urge Danglars to offer him a dinner or a ball, then he will invite us back." "What, you would visit him?" Debray said, laughing. "Why not? With my husband." "But he is a bachelor, this mysterious Count." "Not at all, as you can plainly see," the Baroness said, laughing in her turn and indicating the beautiful Greek. "The woman is a slave, as he told us himself. Do you remember, Morcerf, at your breakfast?" "You must admit, Lucien," said the Baroness, "that she looks more like a princess." "From the 1001 Nights." "Agreed, from the 1001 Nights. But what makes a princess, my dear? Diamonds, and she's covered in them." "Too much so, in fact," said Eugenie. "She would be more beautiful without them, because you could see her neck and her wrists, which are delightfully shapely." "There speaks the artist," said Madame Danglars. "See what an enthusiast she is." "I love everything beautiful," said Eugenie. "So what do you think of the Count?" said Debray. "He strikes me as not too bad himself." "The Count?" said Eugenie, as if she had not previously considered looking at him. "He's very pale, your Count." "Precisely." said Morcerf. "The secret we are looking for lies in that pallor. You know, Countess G claims he is a vampire." "Countess G? Is she back, then?" asked the Baroness. "In that side box," Eugenie said. "Look, mother, almost opposite us. She's that woman with the magnificent blonde hair." "Oh, yes," said Madame Danglars. "Morcerf, do you know what you should do?" "I am at your command, madame." "You should go and visit your Count of Monte Cristo and bring him back here." "Why?" asked Eugenie. "So that we can talk to him. Aren't you curious to see him?" "Not at all." "Peculiar child," the Baroness muttered. "Look," said Morcerf, "he'll probably come of his own accord. He's seen you, madame, and is bowing to you." The Baroness returned the Count's greeting, together with a charming smile. "Very well, then," said Morcerf. "It's up to me. I must leave you while I go and see if there is not some way of talking to him." "Simple. Go into his box." "But I haven't been introduced." "To whom?" "To the beautiful Greek." "Didn't you say she was a slave?" "Ah, yes, but you claim she is a princess." "No, I hope that when he sees me go out he will do the same." "Perhaps. Off you go, then." "I'm going." Morcerf bowed and left. As predicted, when he walked past the Count's box, the door opened. The Count said a few words in Arabic to Ali, who stood in the corridor, and took Morcerf's arm. Ali shut the door and stood in front of it. People gathered around the Nubian in the corridor. "Really," Monte Cristo said, "Paris is an odd city, and you Parisians are odd people. Anyone would think that this is the first time they'd seen a Nubian. Look at them crowding around poor Ali, who doesn't know what to make of it. I guarantee one thing, however, which is that a Parisian could go to Tunis, Constantinople, Baghdad, or Cairo, and no crowd would gather around him." "That is because your Orientals are sensible folk who only look at something when it is worth looking at. But I assure you that Ali is enjoying this popularity for no reason except that he belongs to you, because you are the man à la mode right now." "Really? To what do I owe that distinction?" "To yourself. What else? You give away horseflesh to the value of 1,000 louis. You save the life of the king's prosecutor. You dub yourself Major Brack to race thoroughbreds ridden by jockeys no bigger than marmosets, and finally you win gold cups and send them to beautiful women. Who the devil told you of all these follies?" "Why, the first comes from Madame Danglars, who is dying to see you in her box, or rather for people to see you there. The second I had from Beauchamp's newspaper, and the third I worked out for myself. Why do you call your horse Vampa, if you wish to remain incognito?" True, said the Count. "That was unwise of me. But tell me, does the Comte de Morcerf never come to the opera? I looked around for him, but could not find him anywhere." "He will be here this evening." "Where?" "In the Baroness's box, I think." "And the enchanting young lady with her is her daughter?" "Yes." "I compliment you." Morcerf smiled. "We must speak of that later, and at length," he said. "How do you find the music?" "What music?" "The music you have just heard?" "I think it's very good for music composed by a human composer and sung by birds with 2 feet and no feathers, as the late Diogenes remarked." "My dear Count, you speak as though you could, at will, call up the 7 choirs of paradise." "That's more or less the case. When I want to listen to fine music, Vicomte, music such as mortal ear has never heard, I sleep." "Well, this is the perfect place. Sleep away, my dear Count, sleep away. The opera was designed for no other purpose." "No, I can't. Your orchestra is making too much noise. For me to enjoy the kind of sleep I mean, I need calm and silence, and a particular kind of preparation." "Ah, the famous hashish." "Precisely. Viscount, when you want to hear some music, come and take supper with me." "But I have already heard it at lunch," said Morcerf. "In Rome?" "Yes." "Oh, of course, that was Haydée's guzla. The poor exile sometimes amuses herself by playing me some of her native airs." Morcerf did not press the matter, and the Count, for his part, fell silent. At that moment the bell rang. "Will you excuse me?" said the Count, going back towards his box. "What?" "My best wishes to Countess G. from her vampire." "And the Baroness?" "Tell her that I should be honoured if she would allow me to present my compliments to her in the course of the evening." The third act began. During it, the Comte de Morcerf came, as he had promised, to join Madame Danglars. Morcerf was not one of those people who cause a commotion in the auditorium, so no one noticed his arrival except the others in the box where he took his seat. However, Monte Cristo saw him, and a hint of a smile hovered on his lips. As for Haydée, she saw nothing from the moment when the curtain rose. Like all primitive natures, she adored everything that appealed to her eyes and her ears. The third act followed its usual course. Mademoiselles Noblet, Julia, and Leroux executed their accustomed entrechat, the Prince of Granada was challenged by Robert Mario, and finally the magnificent king, already familiar to you, strode round the theatre, showing off his velvet cloak and leading his daughter by the hand. Then the curtain fell, and the audience immediately repaired to the foyer and the corridors. The Count came out of his box, and a moment later appeared in that of Baroness Danglars. The Baroness could not restrain a cry of surprise, in which there was a hint of joy. "Oh, come in, Count, come in!" she exclaimed. "I have been anxious to add my verbal thanks to those I had already conveyed to you in writing." "Oh, madame," said the Count, "do you still remember that trifle? I had forgotten it." "Perhaps, but what cannot be forgotten, Monsieur le Comte, is that the very next day you saved my good friend Madame de Villefort from the danger she was in with those same horses." "Once again, madame, I do not deserve your thanks. It was my Nubian servant, Ali, who was fortunate enough to be able to perform this service for Madame de Villefort." "Was it also Ali," asked the Comte de Morcerf, "who rescued my "Was it also Ali," asked the Comte de Morcerf, "who rescued my son from the Roman bandits?" "No, Count," said Monte Cristo, shaking the hand that the general offered him. "No, this time I will take the thanks for myself. But you had already offered them, I had received them, and, in truth, I am embarrassed to find you still so grateful. Please do me the honour, Madame la Baronne, of introducing me to your daughter." "You are already introduced, at least in name, for we have spoken of nothing except you over the past 2 or 3 days. Eugénie," the Baroness went on, turning to her daughter, "the Count of Monte Cristo." The Count bowed, and Mademoiselle Danglars gave a slight nod of the head. You are accompanied by a splendid young woman, Monsieur le Comte," said Eugénie. "Is she your daughter?" "No, mademoiselle," Monte Cristo replied, astonished at what was either great naivety or amazing insolence. "She is a poor Greek. I am her guardian." "And her name?" "Haydée," Monte Cristo replied. "A Greek," the Comte de Morcerf muttered. "Yes, Count," said Madame Danglars, "but tell me if you have ever seen in the court of Ali Tebelin, at which you served with such distinction, as admirable a costume as that." "Ah," said Monte Cristo, "you served in Janina, Count?" "I was Inspector General to the Pasha's troops," Morcerf replied. "I do not disguise the fact that I owe my fortune, such as it is, to the generosity of that illustrious Albanian leader." "Look at that," Madame Danglars urged. "At what?" muttered Morcerf. "Well, well," said Monte Cristo, wrapping his arm round the Count and leaning out of the box. At that moment, Haydée, who had been looking around for the Count, saw his pale features beside those of Monsieur de Morcerf, whom he was clasping. The sight produced the same effect as a Medusa on the girl. She started forward as if to devour both of them with her eyes, then, almost immediately, leapt back with a weak cry, which was, however, heard by those closest to her and by Ali, who at once opened the door. "Well, I never," said Eugénie. "What has just happened to your ward, Monsieur le Comte? She seems to be feeling ill." "Yes, she does," said the Count. "But don't worry. Haydée is very nervous and consequently very sensitive to smells. A perfume that she does not like is enough to make her faint. However," he added, taking a medicine bottle out of his pocket, "I have the remedy here." Then he saluted the Baroness and her daughter with a single bow, shook hands one final time with Morcerf and Debray, and left Madame Danglars' box. When he reached his own, Haydée was still very pale. No sooner did he appear than she grasped his hand and said, "To whom were you talking, my lord?" "The Comte de Morcerf," Monte Cristo replied, "who served under your illustrious father and admits owing him his fortune." "The miserable wretch!" Haydée cried. "He it was who sold him to the Turks, and the fortune was the price of his treachery. My dear master, did you not know that?" "I did hear some talk of this story in Epirus," said Monte Cristo, "but I am not familiar with the details." "Come, child, you will tell me. It must be a curious tale." "Oh, yes, come with me and I shall. I think I shall die if I stay any longer facing that man." Haydée leapt to her feet, wrapped herself in her white cashmere burnous embroidered with pearls and corals, and ran out just as the curtain was rising. "Look at that man, he does nothing like anyone else," Countess G. told Albert, who had gone back to her box. "He sits religiously all the way through the third act of Robert le Diable, then leaves just as the fourth act is about to begin." And I think I shall finish slightly early for tonight there, because I can feel my voice is getting a little bit sore.